Ask the English to describe their homeland, and they will wax lyrical about the countryside. You close your eyes and what do you see? Rolling hills, green fields, woodland, a small village, and that quintessential symbol of all that is good, the parish church. Whatever your religion, the splendour and presence of these buildings raises the spirit. Whenever I travel down a quiet country road, I'm always tempted to stop and explore, and it's the parish church that holds a particular fascination. Maybe it's because they're a sanctuary from the pace of modern life, or perhaps it's because these buildings embody centuries of history. But whatever it is, they are full of inspiration. This is the parish of Hatch Beecham, a few miles from Taunton, and like so many Somerset villages, it boasts a church full of interesting and elaborate features. I particularly like the intricate wooden carvings on the end of the church benches. Depicting saints and martyrs of the faith, they were skillfully created by local craftsmen. This interpretation of the resurrection caught my eye. I like the way the figure of Christ has one foot in and one out of a coffin, symbolising everyone's hope of eternal life. I asked historian Robert Dunning to explain to me why so many Somerset churches are renowned for their splendour and intricacy.
The traditional story is that it's the wool trade, and we were doing very well in wool in the later part of the Middle Ages. There was money around, there was a lot of devotion around, and there was also a lot of good building stone, soft enough to be carved rather splendidly. The top of this tower or the windows in this church and show this kind of elaboration which is really rather splendid and we're very proud of.
Who's responsible for the maintenance of the fabric today?
Nowadays it's the congregation, all their friends and relations. People who've worshipped here in the past still want to keep in touch, but congregations are small and it's a huge struggle all the time. But if you were to say to most village communities, we can't cope anymore, we'll have to pull it down or we'll close it, then you can bet that all the community will say, you can't do that, we'll put our hands in our pockets. Because it's the centre of the community still, whether they actively realise it or not, and that church tower is pointing up to heaven and all those sorts of things. So it's terribly important.
Maintaining these wonderful buildings is something of a nightmare, but the one thing you don't want to happen is to lose your tower in a thunderstorm, and believe you me, it did happen. These days they have lightning conductors, and the one thing I've noticed travelling around these churches is that they all seem to have been put in by the same person. It says here, Dawson.
It didn't take long to track down a firm of steeplejacks called J. Dawson & Sons, who are based in Clutton, a village in between Bristol and Shepton Mallet, on the edge of the Mendip Hills. I'm told they've been in business since 1837, and it looks like it.
Hello? Hello? There's somebody there.
Today the firm is in its 5th generation and is run by David Dawson and his son Ian. David is naturally proud of his heritage.
Do you know all the family history?
They started off in Pudsey in Yorkshire, building factory chimneys. They came down to Clutton and won a contract to build a chimney for a brickyard at Greyfield. So they stayed down in Somerset, and then around about 1900, electricity came in, and therefore the tall chimneys weren't so necessary.
It's ironic that many of the chimneys their forefathers had so painstakingly built had to be destroyed by the next generation. In the 1960s, David was called upon to extinguish the evidence. However, today, he prefers to conserve rather than destroy.
I love your yard, and I hope you don't think I'm being rude, but it reminds me of Steptoe and Son. It's fantastic.
Bits of everything, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Everywhere you look, there's something different. And I love this, actually. Are you working on this at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't he? How old is that one? Do you know?
That one's about 150 years old. It's in for repairs. The iron here is gone and corroded the copper belly.
Because you shouldn't really mix the two metals.
That's two dissimilar
Yeah.
metals.
Yeah. I'll take your photograph with that, actually. If you pick that up, really beautiful shape. There's a bit of light in here. Grab hold of it.
Right.
See if I can get you under. Turn and face me there. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really nice. That's really nice. Come straight on to me and just hold him up. Hold him up. You can smile if you want. That's really good. That's lovely.
Being a family business means you hand down the skills from father to son, and in their experience, it's best to start young.
First time I went up was 4 at Radstock on a colliery down there called Middle Pit. It's now gone. And they carry on taking you up every holiday, so you get so used to it, you don't really think nothing of it.
You're being acclimatised from a very early age.
You are, and we've done exactly the same with Ian. And Ian does the same with his 2 boys.
These archive pictures show David taking his 10-year-old son Ian up to the very top of Truro Cathedral.
Because it's like a farmer's son, he's never afraid of animals. And we're never afraid of heights because we don't know nothing else.
As a child, I would go off on my school holidays with father and climb or do whatever work he was doing at the time. And once I got to 16, 17, I never knew anything else, and I didn't want to do anything else at the time. Once it got round to leaving school, I can always remember at the careers officer, when he used to have a lesson, he used to bypass me because he knew I was automatically going to have a job.
It's not just the men who are involved in the family business. Lorraine Dawson, David's wife, takes an active role too. The church in Eastern Gordano is minus its weather vane. It's in for repairs at the Dawson Hospital. Lorraine is administering some TLC.
Do you enjoy this side of the job?
I wanted to do it years ago, but Dave would never let me.
Why not?
Well, I don't think he thought I could do it, to be quite honest, and the telephone rang. And when he came back, I'd finished the bird that he'd started. And of course that was just the beginning of many jobs that I took on.
He's never sent you up the ladder though, on the chimneys, or on the churches.
I've been up scaffoldings to do Godleafing. I went to Llandaff Cathedral, which has an angel on, Arch Gabriel. I didn't enjoy the first day, because I was up a height.
You got used to it, did you?
Yes, after that, yeah.
So, when we think of weather vanes, we usually think of cockerels.
Dragons are to keep the evil spirits away from the church. And weathercocks are to keep an ever watchful eye over the parishioners. Being the first thing up mornings and the last thing down at night, they kept an eye on the parishioners all through the day.
Having prepared the surface, Lorraine brushes on a type of glue known as size, which must be allowed to go tacky before she starts. But she does have to be careful.
If you haven't done any gold leafing for a considerable time, yes, it does get to, and it makes you feel not sick, but a bit funny. But then after a time it wears off and you take no notice of it. I shouldn't think you could get high on it. I hope not. And if I leave that for so long, then I press a gold leaf on, which is in transfer form.
This is a wonderful thing to work on. You must get a great deal of job satisfaction.
It's a pleasure actually, because especially on days when it's lovely and sunny, they shine and they look lovely, and you know that you've done that.
David rarely climbs high these days, but is still very much involved in the business. He organises and sets up jobs for Ian, like this one in Compton Dando, where they've been commissioned to regild the church clock. A new apprentice, Ady, started 3 weeks ago, and true to Dawson form, they've kept it in the family. He's the brother of Ian's fiancée, and much to his surprise, is finding that life as a steeplejack has its advantages.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's most enjoyable.
I'm used to factory work, which is mainly being inside, very repetitive type of work, so it's just complete contrast. So I've probably picked the right time of year to start. Heights wise, I've only been 80 feet so far, so it's just a case of getting used to it, I suppose.
To train someone up ladder buildings or to be in a bosun's chair like we have been today would take anywhere between 3 and 5 years, depending on how quick Adrian as himself would pick it up.
The only way to experience the heights is to get up there with them, so I'm off up the church tower to see for myself. Oh, God. You're a braver man than me. I'm not so sure I could do that.
I'm sure you could fit into the harness.
Yes, well, I'm not going to. This job, it's not just putting up ladders and ropes and bosun chair, though, is it?
We do lead work, copper work, stone masonry, so it isn't all lightning conductors and re-gilding like we are here today. There's a variety of different types of work.
There's no way I can see what Ian's doing unless I lean right out, and I'm not going to do that with this stonework. So I'm going to try something. Look into the camera. Well done.
You wouldn't happen to have the time on you.
I'm not falling for that one. Ian makes it all look so easy, but the job is potentially dangerous. They do climb very high, and accidents can happen. Indeed, 7 years ago, David had a fall that nearly cost him his life. This is Smitham Hill on Mendip. A chimney stands alone in the landscape. Throughout the West Country, there are monuments to our industrial past. They're an extraordinary legacy, but I'll bet you the men who built this chimney up here on Mendip never saw it as a thing of beauty. For them, it was simply functional. And once that industry died, buildings like this were either demolished or allowed to decay. But today we're in a different era. Everybody wants to hang on to that industrial past. And to do this, we need the skills of the steeplejacks. They have laddered up 150 feet to renew the lightning conductor, and are also repainting the metal bands that secure the top of the chimney. Les Davis, the senior warden on Mendip, tells me about its history.
Mendip was always about the exploitation, really, of its wealth, whether it be its mineral or its grazing through the Middle Ages, and this is arguably the last lead smelting chimney that stands in the West Country, certainly on Mendip anyway, so it's very important. It was part of an early catalytic converter, if you like, which took the heavy metal out of the gases, and then eventually the clean stuff going up the chimney, well, as clean as they could get it anyway.
It stood the test of time. I mean, why? How come it's still here?
I don't know, because every other one was actually felled or came down or whatever. How this one escaped, I don't know, but I'm glad it did.
But it's just a chimney.
Yes, it's a chimney. What is this chimney doing here in the middle of nowhere? And that's what we really want to tell people. If you're looking at the industrial past of Mendip, again, the lead smelting, Mendip is linked with lead right from pre-Roman times, right up until the end of the 1800s. And this is the last of them. Now, once the last of them has fallen down, there is nowhere else that has got a chimney like this. And if we let it fall down, all we can do is show somebody some cat ruins.
No ruins here then, but a symbol of our heritage. And for those who work on it, there's an added advantage.
One of the best parts about our job, apart from the historic buildings we work on, is obviously the views as well, which obviously people can't see unless they're working up at heights like this.
If anyone had told me I'd be working with a steeplejack a year ago, I'd have probably laughed.
As a photographer, I like to get as close as I can to my subjects, but this is one occasion where I'd rather keep my feet firmly on the ground. Have there ever been any accidents in the family?
I had a grandfather fall down at, well, he went down inside the chimney at Bromley, which is not all that far from here. But he survived and they brought him back to Clutton in a horse and cart. But we're talking about late 1800s. I had an uncle after that, in another generation since. He fell and he was killed.
He was killed?
Yeah. At Hawkesbury Upton in Gloucestershire.
And what was he on?
That was inside of a tower again. There's 3 generations there.
God.
Granddad, son and grandson.
This is a lovely photograph, isn't it? On Truro Cathedral. But this was shortly before your accident.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Miracle you're still here.
It certainly is a miracle.
Every steeplejack's nightmare, you never expect to fall off. But it was here in Truro Cathedral on June the 21st, 1995, that David Dawson took a tumble. Nobody really knows exactly what happened. He was up there on a little walkway in the clerestory, checking some cables, and suddenly he fell off and fell into the choir stalls.
It was a Tuesday morning, the phone rang about 9:30 to say David had an accident. He'd fallen onto the Canon Treasurer's pew, which had actually saved his life in one sense, but it also did a lot of damage because it ripped his side out. He had a broken collarbone, 3 ribs, 1 impaled, broken pelvis, shattered leg. I know if it had happened anywhere else other than in the cathedral, he wouldn't be here. The dean at that time used to have what everybody called, the dean's having a breakfast. This particular morning it was all St John's ambulance people. He was attended to immediately and the ambulance was there within minutes and had him up to the hospital immediately.
They made him go to sleep with all the drugs and that he was on because they wanted his body to mend because he had such a big opening in the side of his stomach. So they operated on him and wanted him to be as still as possible whilst the wounds mended.
His family kept vigil at his bedside, willing David to find the strength to survive. It really was touch and go. Finally, after 8 weeks in intensive care, he turned the corner.
And then they decided, right, he's got to be brought back to consciousness. He was on a dialysis machine because they closed everything down and the machines did everything for him, because they said the pain would have been that excruciating. But they could only do it very, very slowly.
Well, it was just like waking up another morning. And as though nothing had happened, just like waking up another morning, like this morning.
You will only remember if you want to remember.
I knew I fell. I thought I tripped. But other than that, I don't remember anything of it. To stimulate his memory, his family were encouraged to talk to him all the time and to bring in anything that might lift him out of his coma. Lorraine, the wife, used to bring pictures in every day and show me and say, do you know who this is?
This is John, this is Catherine, and that's me.
In the end, the first thing I said was, you must think I'm bloody stupid.
That was the first words that David had said, and I don't know why, but I rushed out, and I rushed down the stairs with tears streaming down my eyes. One of the anaesthetists was coming up the stairs, Ray Sinclair, and he collared me and he said, "What's the matter, Lorraine?" I said, "David has spoken, David has spoken." He said, "Brilliant, brilliant."
After months of nursing and specialist care, it took almost a year to recover completely. And now, nothing can keep David from doing the job he loves. Today they are in Bristol, and at a building very different from the twin spires of Truro, but equally challenging, the Clifton Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul.
I couldn't get back to work quick enough because I just love the work. I suppose nowadays the son and the wife, they don't let me go up like they used to let me go up, so they more or less keep me grounded. I do go up several, but not like I used to.
We're laddering the highest point of the cathedral, the centre column, to carry out a test on the lightning inductor. So what we've got to do is ladder the column and put a test on from top to bottom.
And how often do you do this then?
Well, they should be tested once a year, but this one's carried out every 2 to 3 years.
Smashing. Hey, do you want to get in this picture?
No.
Nope.
Keep it in the box.
Okay.
To tie the ladders to, and they've got to be left so that they can be here at any time, and that'll just about complete it. So I'll leave you to it, as it were.
See you later.
It looks rather a difficult tower to get up. Is it any different from the older churches?
The only difficulty is you've got 3 or 4 layers to get all your gear up. It's not one pull like it normally is.
I've really enjoyed photographing these steeplejacks and admire their calm and level-headedness. But I know it could never be a job for me, even if I had started young. No Somerset towers or gargoyles here. This is a modern 20th century symbol of Christianity. And when man builds a church, he always builds high. And whether it be a column, a tower, or a steeple, those symbols of faith will always need maintaining. And that's why we need the skills of the steeplejack.